what's going on, guys? Kale here, coming at you with another video. This one is going to be kind of just a little test through of how well some of the Web Warriors, anyway, perform in Dark Dimension 4. Now, with this video kind of going on, I would obviously like to take in Spider-Punk, as he is my planned third Web Warrior for Dark Dimension 5. However, I am quite a bit short on the Oz formulas. So I need another 5 to get him to G14, and then I'll need another 25 to get him to G15. So I think it's going to be quite a while before I am able to actually fully test the plan team that I want to take into Dark Dimension 5. But I did want to go in and just kind of play around a little bit and see how most of the team performs, if that makes sense. So in here, the 4 characters that I'm planning to take into Dark Dimension 5 are here. So we've got Cloak, Dagger, we've got Scarlet Spider-Man, and Ghost Spider. Now, I would like to kind of test out Spider-Punk here, but he is not available. So I figured, why not? I might as well go in and test out regular Spider-Man. And we'll just kind of see how this goes. I am currently, I kind of saved myself for the city section in DD4. This is on Kale, so the characters are fairly built up. You know, when we look at them here, I'll take them out real fast. They're obviously all G15, as this is Dark Dimension 4. You know, fairly good stars on most of them. So Scarlet Spider over here is 5 red stars. Cloak over here, 5 red stars. Dagger, 5 red stars. Ghost Spider over here is 6 red stars, but I only currently have 4 activated. And then we also have OG Spider-Man. Now, OG Spider-Man is 5 red stars as well. And again, he is 7 yellow. So, you know, fairly good power level. And let's just kind of jump into it and see how the team does on the first node. And, you know, I think this is also kind of a good thing, too, in the sense where if you are still kind of working towards Dark Dimension 4 and you haven't gotten into the city section and maybe you haven't decided to build up a city team yet, I definitely think this might be a viable option, but we'll see how well they perform on these nodes. Typically, you know, from everything I remember, the last node is the hardest of the city sections, and that was kind of the only one that was kind of a multi-day process when I first went through. But let's go in and we'll kind of figure out what we want to do. I'm going to say let's go after Mordo, get a blind on him so his heal block won't land. And let's see, what do we got? Let's go ahead. Everyone is actually blinded, which is nice. So that landed on everyone. Let's go ahead and trying to think of who I really want to ability block. Let's go in ability block Nobu, just so he won't get any summons going. And we're just going to start kind of going into this team now. And, you know, I think this is realistically who I want to take. You know, some notes, obviously. You know, if you are planning to take in Cloak and Dagger, it's definitely one of those things where it either needs to be both of them or none of them. So if you decide that, you know, maybe you don't have the resources to take, you know, both Cloak and Dagger and you can only take in one, I don't think they really perform as well as individuals, and they're more one of those performs really well as a duo or a pair. So we're going in. The first node is going pretty smoothly. You know, no big problems yet. I'm going to start saving cooldowns for the final wave that should be dropping. The only thing I could see that this team having a problem with is, you know, basically sustainability and the healing. But Cloak should be getting some heals from Dagger and vice versa. And then the Web Warriors up here should be essentially kind of keeping themselves pretty well healed. So we'll go in, we'll start focusing on Squirrel Girl. And I'm not doing this so much as a, you know, strategy guide with how to beat these nodes. It's more just kind of testing the team out and seeing if they are able to, you know, make significant progress. And I think kind of a wrong attitude a lot of people go into Dark Dimension with is that, you know, you need to one-shot the node, and that if a team can't one-shot a node, it's garbage. I think that's a funny mentality to have, just because you don't get anything extra for it being a one-shot attempt or if it's a 30-shot attempt. It is the same rewards. If it takes you a little longer, it takes you a little longer. I will say if a team is basically getting, destroyed the whole time and you're making no progress, day by day, then it might maybe be considered, it might be worth considering, a different team. But if they're able to even just take out a few enemies before either they get wiped, or if they even take out a wave, to me, that means it's a successful team. I don't necessarily think that the Dark Dimension content is a race. Unless you're trying to complete it first and be the first one ever to complete it. And honestly, that's just in a realm of Krakenness I am not willing to even explore. That is not where, I don't have those type of resources to be spending thousands upon thousands of dollars just to say I finished a mode first. My ego is not that fragile. If it was something that it was skill-based, maybe absolutely, but, I honestly think being the first to finish a Dark Dimension campaign isn't necessarily always skill-based, it's how much you spent. And while there's nothing wrong with spending, Kale is definitely a whale. I buy characters and all that stuff, but, aside from bragging rights, you don't really get anything from completing Dark Dimension first. So, getting off my soapbox, but the moral of the story is, basically, I don't think you should be going into Dark Dimension nodes with the mindset of, if I can't one-shot this node, it's garbage. Because, especially in a mode like Dark Dimension 5, it is very resource-intensive, where it's taking a really long time to farm up these resources. It's been, I think, just about almost 4 months at this point. I can't exactly remember when in November Dark Dimension 5 opened, but we're coming up on the 4th month, and only a handful of people, I think it's still under 30 people, have actually completed their first run. There's only several hundreds that have actually even entered. So, with that, there's really no rush to complete these nodes super fast in Dark Dimension 5, because if you blow through the nodes, chances are you're not going to have your next team ready to go anyway, so you're going to end up waiting. And I don't really use power cores or anything to kind of refresh my Dark Dimension heroes, just because, again, it's there is really no benefit to going through a speed run through this. It's definitely a marathon, it's not a sprint, and there's nothing wrong with a team taking out a couple enemies and then wiping. And as you're seeing here, they were able to one-shot the first node, no problems. More importantly, what I take away from that is we basically started the match with full health. And I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think Scarlet Spider's passive, the healing mechanic, I want to say is actually proccing anytime anyone is attacking, but it's kind of hard to tell. I'm going to read his passive real quick in-game and see if that is the case. I know, obviously, we're getting the heals when the Web Warriors are going, but I'm curious if anything in his kit is actually healing up Cloak and Dagger, or if it's just Dagger's abilities. So let's, as soon as Scarlet Spider gets a turn again, we'll read his passive, and just see if it says, all allies, or just Spider or Web Warrior allies. And as you can kind of see, I'm not really going through these nodes very strategically. I'm just kind of picking a target and kind of burning them down. So let's see. Okay. Okay, so yeah, he's only actually healing, I'm just reading his passive here, he's only actually healing the Web Warriors, so there's something with Cloak and Dagger that is healing them, and I'm assuming it's something to do with Dagger. So we'll look at her in just a minute too when she gets her next turn, but, so far this team is performing pretty well. If you don't have a team yet for Dark Dimension 4 and you're still kind of shopping around, I definitely think this team is proving to show, potential. And the better thing behind that is that this is kind of reassuring my faith in bringing this team into Dark Dimension 5. Because while obviously the enemies in Dark Dimension 5 are going to be stronger than this, the overall mechanics of how this team plays is going to be very similar. And let's see. Oh, I forgot about Cloak's passive over here. So that's actually what's happening. So at the end of his turn, Cloak is always basically stealing 5% of health from the most injured enemy, and he's redistributing it to his allies. So basically, whenever Cloak is going, he is stealing 5% health from the enemy. And the cool thing about that is he's doing it also from adjacent enemies as well. So after every turn, Cloak is stealing 5% of health from an enemy. And honestly, that's probably why I put him on my DD5 character recommendation. But I've gotten just very unfamiliar with his kit, as, you don't really are paying attention, I guess, when you're doing the Doom 2 raids, because the Mystic team just blows through the section that I can honestly almost slap it on auto and it's not a problem. So I totally forgot that was actually even an element in Cloak's kit. So, that definitely is where a lot of this sustain is coming from. So with the Web Warriors kind of healing themselves, Cloak and Dagger are kind of healing themselves as well as the Web Warriors if they might be injured. Because when Cloak is stealing that 5% health, he's then redistributing it to all his allies, to himself and all allies. So that's where kind of those big heals are coming from. So, let's pop this down real quick. We'll do an attack. And at the end of his turn, we should kind of see, how many got drained. So if you saw there, basically everyone that was surrounding Thor got 5% of their health drained. And then health was then redistributed to the team. So that's where, that survivability is coming from. And, this team is actually, believe it or not, even with OG Spider-Man, the team is actually performing really well. Spider-Punk is essentially just kind of a walking passive for the most part. His passive increases the crit chance for his allies, and if you are running your Web Warriors, for the most part all as Raiders, the increased crit chance means they'll be critting more, and with the Raider ISO 8, they get bonus crit damage. And that's kind of the logic behind that. But honestly, for myself, basically where my characters are geared, I might actually think about taking in OG Spider-Man into Dark Dimension 5, just because he needs a little bit less gear. He's already G15, so he would just need his G16 pieces. So I guess it'll kind of depend on where I am resource-wise when I get to that point. And I think that's kind of another very important subject, is when you are doing your DD5 or really any Dark Dimension planning, I think it's good to go in with kind of a strategy of who you're going to take into DD Dark Dimension, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 6, 7, 8, or whatever they're calling future incarnations. But when you are deciding on the characters, I think it's also to be very flexible and, based off of resources, new characters coming out. I think it's a good idea to be able to adjust that plan and not be so set in stone. So, just kind of going through this own little test, kind of what I'm taking away from it is that OG Spider-Man actually might be a character I consider. This team, their sustain is just absolutely insane. I'm going into these and I'm not having to, they're going into each match with full health. Or if they're not at full health, they're at full health shortly thereafter. So this team is performing, I would say above my expectations. I expected them to do really well. But had I had this team as an option in Dark Dimension 4 when I originally went through, this would have been just super easy. I mean, you're seeing now we're not really, again, I'm not planning my attack strategically for the most part. I am kind of choosing who I'm fighting a little bit, but for the most part, I'm just kind of going with it and more sharing my overall thoughts with y'all versus being like super intent focused on this fight. So I definitely will say that this team, I mean, for sure it has my stamp of approval. I will definitely, like I said, be really curious now whether I even take Spider-Punk into Dark Dimension 5, and that's just because where he is resource-wise. I don't think it's a waste to develop him, just because I would say Web Warriors are designed for future content that we currently don't have in the game. So, I think building them up will kind of get you ahead of the curve, and I'm finding they're usable in pretty much like every game mode except Arena. And even that, there's some up for debate. Seeing some people use some Web Warriors with the Eternals and kind of creating an RNG type meta because of the chance to evade or dodge. But so, if you can use these characters, obviously in the Doom raids 1 or 2, they're phenomenal. They are doing really well in the alpha raids. They're going to perform just as well in the beta raids as well as in the Greek raids. So they basically can kind of cover all current raid content that's in the game, and at the bonus part of it, they are proving to be really good in this Dark Dimension content as well. So when you can get multiple uses out of a set of characters by building them up, those are always the ones I'm going to try to steer towards into taking into Dark Dimension. You don't want to necessarily take a character that you're not going to use anywhere else in the game. If you're strictly taking a character up just for Dark Dimension, I think that's a waste of resources. You want to kind of be smarter with your resources, and especially with as limited as G16 pieces are, I think you really do need to be pretty smart with who you're bringing up. But we'll wrap up this node. I think I am going to save cooldowns and just kind of play semi-smart on this. And so we should go into the next fight with pretty much all of our cooldowns refreshed. Based off of damage, we should be at full health. We are getting those 5% health steals from Vision over here. So, Vision will go down rather shortly. And then we will go into the last node and just kind of wrap this up. I'll give some final thoughts on the team overall, and that'll pretty much be it. So we'll go into the last node here. And I would say kind of like historically, this was the harder node. This essentially is the boss node for the city section. So it is the hardest. And this is, I think, where a lot of people kind of hit a little bit of a wall when you are doing DD4 for the first time. And while I don't have any experience in Dark Dimension 5 yet, I would imagine the Dark Dimension 5 boss nodes are kind of designed in a very similar sense, where they are meant to slow you down, and that's where your teams are going to run into more of a problem. So as soon as this loads in, we will start the fight. And basically, from what I remember from this node, I think it's the first 2 waves are fairly easy, and then it's the final wave that really is kind of just nasty. We are having to worry, Captain Marvel over here did get her big attack off, and that is unavoidable. So even if I had, even if everyone had evade on the field, it still would have hit because it's an unavoidable move. So, with this node in particular, if you can kind of survive that Captain Marvel ultimate, the rest of it kind of gets a lot easier. And as you're seeing here, we are starting to get slowly healed back up over here for OG Spider-Man, since he did take quite a bit of damage from that Captain Marvel ultimate. We are going to kind of focus over here on Star-Lord, and the reasoning behind that is Star-Lord, obviously has that blind mechanic, and we don't want our characters blind. Let's see. So Spider-Man is hanging on by the hairs of his chinny chin chin. Good thing, though, is the Web Warriors do heal up very well, especially if you kind of get a nice IUE attack off. They will I would say typically with the actual full Web Warriors team, 2 AoE attacks will kind of get your team back to full health. But we are running, obviously, a shortened version of the Web Warriors just because taking in all 5 is just very unrealistic. It's a massive amount of bio gear, as well as just a massive amount of superior Oz formulas. So we did lose our Scarlet Spider. So our Web Warriors have lost a big component of their healing, but we do still have a little healing from Cloak, and this is, I think, where we're getting into that point where, I was saying that just because a team can't necessarily one-shot a node doesn't mean that the team isn't good. Because what we could do, if we really thought that this was just maybe a case of bad RNG, and, we just kind of got the raw end of the stick, we could always quit out of this and, try for a second attempt for better RNG. But I don't want this video to go on, excessively long. So I would say if they're able to, again, we cleared 4 enemies, and we did survive kind of that initial onslaught of attacks. Typically, the enemy's first set of moves is when they're going to be using ultimates and specials and all that stuff. So if you're able to kind of survive their first turn, it becomes a lot easier. And, will they be able to clear the second node or the second wave? I'm not too sure. But the fact that they were able to clear the first wave on a single pass is good. It's great. This would be kind of a good run if this is where I ended for the day. I made a good dent in the damage. I almost kind of got to the halfway point of the node. So for me, I would consider this a successful attempt for the day, if this was actually like a first attempt. And we're going to keep going, though. We're going to keep playing as if, we are going to try to one-shot it. I don't think that's going to happen, as you're kind of seeing. And, we are starting to lose members here and there. We just lost Cloak, so we just lost our last kind of healing component. So at this point, the team is going to start to fall apart, which is fine. This again goes back to that marathon aspect, and we had a good attempt for the day, and I would be perfectly satisfied with tomorrow then going in and doing a second attempt, and, maybe even a third attempt, depending on. So, we'll go ahead, let the enemy wipe us for the thrills of the video, but also I am curious to see how much more damage they're able to do. And we can always look at the end of the match and see, what they were able to do damage-wise for the entirety of the fight. Alright, so let's see. My assumption, Dagger is going to be the next to die. She really loses the ability to land the blinds after Cloak is gone, so she just becomes a little bit less powerful. We did just lose OG Spider-Man. Dagger is now gone, and I imagine Ghost Spider should be following suit rather shortly. So, a couple things, I guess, to take away from this. Is this team one of those crazy OP teams that can one-shot every node? No. Are they a bad team? Absolutely not. Looking here damage-wise, I was able to do almost 19 million in damage, so, this node is 42 million in health, and I got down to 27 million. So, to me, that is a very successful attempt. That is almost halfway through the node. So for me, I will say that the Web Warriors, as well as Cloak and Dagger, have my full stamp of approval for use in Dark Dimension. Now, like I said, it is going to kind of depend on where you are gear-wise, on maybe who your third Web Warrior is. For myself personally, the original plan is to bring in Spider-Punk, but as I said at the start of the video, he is still quite a bit away from G15 even. So, depending on where I am resources-wise, OG Spider-Man is a phenomenal candidate, as we just saw, and I would think even Miles would perform, equally as well. So yeah, so that is just a quick little test slash run through of the Web Warriors plus Cloak and Dagger in Dark Dimension 5. Hopefully y'all did find this video helpful. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe. I want to thank y'all so much for watching, and curious about your ideas on who you're planning to take into Dark Dimension 5, or even Dark Dimension 5, you can leave that in the comments section. Again, thank y'all so much for watching. Hope you are having a good week. Take it easy and be safe.